In this video, I'm going to document the process of setting up a new garden bed at Tony Lenzo Limbrook Community Garden. I'll be using permaculture principles and building a hugelmound. I have the opportunity to pick one bed from a selection of about 6 different beds, and I picked that one. The one that seems to have the biggest number of weeds. Now, you may wonder, why would you select a bed that has so many weeds? You're going to spend days pulling them out and getting the bed ready. The thing is, when you actually take a closer look at that bed, you realize that most of those weeds are actually cover crops, nitrogen-fixing plants that were seeded there to either protect the bed during winter or because the bed was empty last year. Another observation, when you look at the 2 beds growing right next to it, they don't have the same quality, the same vibrancy of greens and robust growth that this bed has. What that tells me is that the soil life, the structure of the soil under this particular bed is really healthy because it's supporting growth, it's supporting diversity, and that's what I want. And those are some of the reasons why I selected this particular bed over the other ones. Now the next step is, what do I do with all of these weeds? One of my options is to actually tilt the soil, turn the plants upside down, and let them decompose. However, by doing that, I would also be disturbing the structure of the soil. And if there were networks of fungi connecting plants and really nurturing and adding diversity to the life of the soil, I will be destroying those networks. So I don't want to disturb the structure of the soil. So what I decided to do in this particular case is to use cardboard to sheet mulch the entire bed. By doing that, I am blocking sunlight from getting to those plants, the cover crops. And by doing that, they will not survive. They will die and they will decompose. However, they will decompose in place. And by doing so, they will add more value to the structure of the soil as opposed to actually disrupting the structure of the soil by tilting. One thing that I like to be mindful of is what materials I'm bringing from the outside, and do I know what chemicals are added to those materials? In this case, I'm using cardboard to set up the foundation of this bed, but I don't know what materials people are putting in cardboard these days. For the most part, cardboard is widely used in the permaculture community as a source of mulching. For the most part, I believe it's safe, especially if it doesn't have any kind of pictures on it or colors or high intensity glossy images. It's just a straight out cardboard. But I don't know. For that reason, I only use cardboard as a foundation, and once the bed is up and running, I try not to use it again as my primary source of mulching. The next step is to cover the cardboard with compost. I don't have access to fresh compost right now, so what I did here is I collected the wood chips from this side of the bed and put them on top of the cardboard. So those wood chips had been decomposed there for probably at least a growing season. And on top of the wood chips, I am putting dry leaves. You can see the wood chips, they pretty much look like soil at this point. And on top of that, I am adding leaves from the autumn. Here you can see the bed covered with leaves completely. And then I'm gonna add another layer of decomposed wood chips on top to hold them in place. And then after that, I should be pretty much ready to start planting. Although it's still a little bit cold, I'm probably going to wait at least 6 weeks before I start planting on this bed. So that's what the finished bed looks like, ready to start planting. This is kind of what the garden looks like right now. So it's still early in the season. Folks are still not planting, but I'm very excited. This bed looks ready, and I'm ready to go. So I will be doing another update of what the garden looks like once the season gets going. And the garden season is up and going, and my garden is looking really good. So you saw some zucchini. Here are some broccolis that I planted, especially for later on when things get cool again. The broccolis really take off. I have some bush beans growing right under tall yard-long beans. I love growing yard-long beans because they're huge. They can reach 2-3 feet. They don't have the hard vein on top, so you can just chop them up, freeze them. I dry them for storage, put them in soups. They're really, really delicious. So lots of green beans growing here. This is probably my basic green garden in terms of like a lot of the stuff that I add to salads or that I eat on daily basis. I get it from here. I have another garden where I grow potatoes and squashes, kind of a lot of the heavier crops for winter storage. But this is is close to my house. It's nice to come here after work, decompress, especially in the middle of the pandemic and everything else that is going on. One thing that I wanna learning lesson is that I mulched the floor, the last layer of mulch. The wood chips were not as decomposed, so the plant had a little bit of a slow start, but once they got going, you can see they're growing really nicely. The green beans are awesome. There is beneficial insects all over the place. The sunflowers are doing really well. The cucumbers are coming in, so it's plenty of food for one person right now. I have some greens. These are chards I use like spinach to make omelets and that sort of things. And you can see sunflowers, different kinds of sunflowers. They attract beneficial insects. Actually, sunflowers have some what they call secondary metabolite, which are substances like antibiotics and things that the bees can use to actually heal themselves. So I love having sunflowers in the garden. I love bringing them home, and the bees definitely enjoy them. So one thing that I will do differently is when I plant my seedlings, I would plant them directly into a little mound of compost that goes all the way down to the soil, so the plants don't have that delay process where the roots are going through wood chips that are not fully decomposed and are actually competing for nitrogen. So I would do that differently. But overall, very pleased with the results. We got tons of food from this garden. It's looking good. And I am going to actually give you an update of what the garden looks like 6 months later now. So this is what the garden looks like in December. So still, there is a lot of vitality. The leaves in the trees are drying up, but the garden is looking good. The brassicas, obviously all the summer crops, the beans, they are done, but the brassicas are really coming into their season. I'm still harvesting a lot of broccolis, kales from this garden. Thank you so much for staying tuned, and I hope you will join me again on another video.